So this is the Transforming from Engineer to Engineering Leader. I'm Andrea Barto. I'm the Director of Engineering at WellSky for the billing and financial teams for our home, health, and hospice pillar. I graduated the University of Texas at Austin. I liked it so much I went twice, so I got my MBA there too. So that's go Longhorns. I have over 18 years of technology experience from web to game development, and also 10 years of engineering management. I currently live in Dripping Springs with my husband, 3 kids, and my fluffy cat. I'll just be going over a few topics today about what it means to be a leader and some tips as well. Let's see, so the benefits of being a leader, both architects and managers would benefit greatly from the leadership and soft skills that are required for their roles. A lot of projects are involving lots of different departments and cross-team work, and so being able to communicate effectively is important. I also enjoy being a champion for change in the organization. It's very impactful to know that not only your team, but others can improve and so forth. Another great thing about being a leader is to help steer others from whether that be pain points, lessons learned, and other things of that nature. So when I first started off as an engineer, I didn't realize that you didn't need to have a leader or title of manager to be an engineering leader. If you want to drive initiatives or do you really believe in a cause, then you can be a leader. Any level can, any department. And so do you enjoy collaborating with others, tackling problems, and also do you like mentoring and teaching others? Then you can be a leader too. One of the first great steps in being a leader for any organization is to earn your stripes. So definitely a lot of times you hear like, prove it, show me that you can do this. And so do that, definitely get a few projects under your belt that show that you can be successful. While you're doing that, start building out your relationships, your network within the organization, help them understand, where you're coming from, what are some things that you're trying to accomplish. Maybe there's an overlap between the different teams. Be able to be open to helping others so that when the time comes, they are willing to help you back. I've met folks before that, weren't as eager to be a team player. And so other groups weren't as excited again to help them with initiatives. And so again, that's a really important part to be successful. Gaining and giving trust. Trust is oftentimes easily given, but quickly taken away. And so you have to be careful with how you treat that. And so be open to listening to others to understand, prior history about the domain, why things are set up a certain way. Through that, you understand where their concerns are, what their thoughts and ideas are as well, so that you can be open to hearing their approaches as well. Selling, like getting buy-in from others, whether that be, your own team with engineers for refactoring, or it could be a new project that you'd like to do and a new approach to, whether that be design or marketing. Again, that's a very important part of selling your ideas to others so that they understand where you're coming from. Confidentiality is another part, is if you're, in a position where you are working on a contract or some kind of negotiation, it's better to wait until things are finalized. It's also important if someone's confided to you with you with something important that they don't want readily vocalized amongst the team, like keep that to yourself. Because if you start telling others, they realize that whatever they tell you isn't going to be kept in confidence. Again, that's very important to realize that sometimes timing is everything, and speaking up and sharing things too soon is can create a little bit of havoc, or and then they again won't be able to trust you with trying to maybe work on things when they're at the beginning stages of issues. Own your mistakes. On an everyday basis, you could be having issues with things and whatnot, but more often than not, I think people have a hard time talking about that. And then in order to create like a environment where people are vulnerable and humble, I think it's important to say, hey, yeah, like my bad, I did this wrong, and that's okay. So that when they, whether it be peers or teammates or other groups, that happens to them, they're comfortable saying that too. Another part of being a leader is realizing that communication is one of the cornerstones to that. More often than not, I've joined a call where we're beginning to problem solve something, but yet we don't really completely understand the problem that we're solving. So slowing down to go fast is definitely a great way to do that. Summarizing, saying, hey, this is my understanding of what's going on and what we've tried before, is also another way to help clarify what people are really doing and bringing everybody back to like a focal point. I feel like it's very demotivating with people don't understand what they're trying to solve, but we're, creating urgency to do that. And so just slowing down and talking it through and saying, hey, this is what we're doing. Do you have any ideas of how to really do that? Really helps, again, to clear the expectations of, okay, this is the next action items, this is what we're going to do next, and documenting what that is so everybody's on the same page, and if something's incorrect, you can real time change it. Again, getting that constant feedback from others. As you grow in your career, you won't be able to be the subject matter expert of everything, and so you'll really have to start relying on others to help solve or make solutions. So sometimes being a leader is just getting everybody in the right room. Even a week or two ago, I ended up being on a call with somebody that was a network engineer and an application engineer and support and others. And alone, any one of those wouldn't have been able to figure out the problem. So together we were able to, piece it all together and better troubleshoot and solve the customer's needs. And so definitely learn what you're good at, and then also don't be afraid to find out and seek out the help that you need for that circumstance or case. Another part about being a leader is being your authentic self. This is one area that I definitely struggled with at the beginning of my career. Being a female in technology, just out the get-go, I knew that I was different than, my male peers. The struggle that I had was more often than not, folks specifically wanted me to be somebody else. And so that's, exhausting. And so I just encourage folks to, find your voice, be comfortable with who you are, and be okay with being different, and know that that's a value add for the organization, that you have a different perspective. And it's great to stand out from the crowd and really just embrace that, and instead change it into be a perspective of being a better version of yourself and growing you for where you're at today, and looking for the futuristic of who you want to be, and not be chasing wanting to be someone else that's not achievable. Continue to learn. There's lots of great folks out there that want to be mentors, that want to give back. And so be open to the feedback and be looking for those cues of folks that are willing to say, hey, advocate for you, be an ally for you in the organization. That's really impactful. Also be trying new things. Technology field is always ever changing. And so be on the lookout for new things to be learning and growing on, and be okay with if it fails, that's fine too. And then give back, share what you learn with others, so that, you know, they can grow as well. Lean into change. As you grow as being a leader, transformations take hard work and effort. So be brave about trying things differently. Try to collaborate with other people to get their perspectives. There's been many times where I've did an agile transformation, and I've really worked hand in hand with, you know, product and design and other engineers, and really brainstormed to try to make things better. And building that camaraderie was really important, because I knew that everybody was coming from a good place and had a good heart about it. And then I, you know, wouldn't have been able to move the needle as much as I would have without those key people alongside me. And so, again, just seek out what that looks like and understand that you have to be able to explain why things are changing, what the benefits are, and then be willing to change if things, you know, need to be adjusted along the way on that journey. And acknowledge that it could be some time that it takes to do that transformation, and that's okay. Another piece about being a leader that's interesting is speaking up. At one of my first jobs, I was talking to another manager, and he was asked to be on a business trip and have another person on his team sent as well. And so I asked him, "Oh, okay, well, who are you choosing?" And he said, "Oh, I'm choosing like so and so person." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And so and he said, "Oh yeah, and almost every other one-on-one, he mentioned he likes traveling and wants to always go on these business trips." And so I learned something important in that moment, that oftentimes or not, a lot of times it wasn't like he was doing a survey to his whole team, that he thought it was like a simple kind of thing of, oh, this person was interested in that, so why not pick him? Because the intent. And so that's the moment that I realized that you have to proactively raise your hand and say, "Hey, I'm interested in, you know, being a leader and whatnot." And so I did that, and then through that, over time, I got more training and more understanding, and then that's even how I became a manager. Is again saying, "Yes, I'm interested. What is the steps taken to get there?" Even to this day, when I'm wanting to work on a particular project, even if it's not in my area, I say, "Hey, this is, you know, what I'm interested in. Can I work on this?" And so that's a great way to think of things, is to kind of raise your hand. Don't expect someone to call you out to be running or doing anything. Just pave your way and, you know, move through that. One area that I've struggled with in the past, and is something I have to intentionally work on, is to advocate for myself. I'm very strong with being there for peers and my team, but oftentimes or not, if it has to do with myself individually, I'm not as a strong advocate for that. And so a lot of times I have to self-reflect and realize, hey, if this one thing that's bothering me was happening to a team member or something else, would I fight for that? And so it's something to be mindful of as a leader. Is, are you also thinking of what would be beneficial for you, whether that be your career or a project or anything? So be careful with that. Another thing that's interesting is Speak Up by Miranda Paul. It's a great book for kids. So if you're thinking about these sort of topics and how to help the next generation, it talks about diversity, speaking up when things aren't fair, and other things like that, of being brave and not afraid to, again, mention things that should be addressed. As a leader, we also often have uncomfortable conversations. Those conversations are important. And I think the Dare to Lead book by Brene Brown is a great resource to learn about creating boundaries, of having healthy, constructive conversations that are important to have. And so more often than not, it's, putting those ground rules in place, making sure that people, step away if it becomes too heated, to realize to not be defensive, and numerous things that teams struggle with that are important to kind of grow through. That's a great book to read, not only for yourself, but if you want to read that together as a team, if that's something that they could grow from. And finally, celebrating successes. I don't think people do that enough. And so appreciate others' contributions. Look back and see how, you have impacted your organization, how you've grown, and so forth, and then share them. Brag is another book by Penny Klaus, who's really talks about tooting your own horn without blowing it. It's a great book. And so just really be thinking about how you can share that and your team's successes. Again, it's a great way to continue on those improvements and then move from there. It's, not my natural part. It's something I had to work on, was how to be intentionally keeping track of all of those. So I take notes, and then I also document those and send those out depending upon what those achievements are. And then questions.
Andrea, how do you encourage a lot of your team to make contributions when, I think a lot of people don't reach out enough because they just are so focused on their business, but do you make time for intellectual creativity or just specifics on just how to make contributions to provide better solutions for the team without, obviously thinking in that leadership mentality? How do you kind of provoke some of those conversations?
Sure. So one of the things at my latest organization that I noticed is that they were mostly just focused on this everyday sprint to sprint work. And so we took some capacity out of the sprint to just do one day a sprint to do learning. And so we walked through what those things that they were trying to do. They also use that if they want to work on like updating the automation framework or some piece of code that really has been bothering them to refactor. Now they've even, like you said, like started thinking forward focused of, hey, maybe I can POC this new idea that they had, which really kind of was interesting, that they like make a note and then they work on it in the next sprint. And then also we'd start talking about the technical roadmap. And so this last quarter, we started building that out for our next quarter of what that looks like, if there's things that we're trying to talk through. I've also done in the past, like a one, afternoon workshop where we write out things that maybe need improvement and do brainstorming together, depending on how bad the technical debt is. You could do like a workshop of that and get all your ideas out and then create action items from that.
Yeah, and I think also with time being such a unique matter for us working from home, personal development or I think business development or personal development has been a big criteria for people right now. And I think having that specific timeline to provide that personal development within the organization has been lost due to just the amount of work that has been put on us, especially this year, I think more than ever. You talk about doing these specific coding and being able to, try things in different areas. What do you do outside of just the day-to-day work to, kind of allow for that personal development?
For myself or my team? Like
yourself or for your team? Yeah.
Sure. So for myself, I really moved to like listening to audiobooks because I can kind of do that on the go now. And it helps me to be able to listen to different things. So some of the books that I've listed, I listened to an audiobook so it could start and stop and really be able to do that while I'm still dealing with kids and stuff. So balancing that is difficult. So that's helped myself to be able to keep up with that. Um, I'll share like little tidbits. If I read something and I know that someone's trying to learn about a certain area, I'm like, hey, here's this one, like one pager to at least read through that. Or like right now, there's like some tutorials too that maybe take like 30 minutes to do that people can do that are not too time consuming. So that helps again, because yeah, that definite line between working and then I think having your own personal time still needs to happen. So I try to be mindful of having those in chunks as well. And so we talk through what those look like for people. So that's just one example. Again, a lot of times I try to personalize what people are trying to learn next and things of that nature. So that's helpful.
And my other question was in
Mhm.
regards to more of how your dynamic is with your team. Just understanding that certain people tend to be more boisterous than others. The individuals that may not be as expressive, perhaps in their day to day or week to week. Do you have kind of tips or tricks about provoking them to engage more, or um, you know, be able to kind of communicate how things are going, just to kind of make sure that they're being involved just as much as the others?
Yeah, definitely. I definitely have a heart for folks that are introverted and quiet. Remember, I was like talking to someone a few weeks ago, and they're like, "Oh, you're extrovert." I was like, "I definitely am not." So that's it's interesting. So there's some people that I say, again, build that camaraderie with them. Like, oh, we'll have like a team building. So I think a month ago we did like a feature complete team building, and so we played this werewolf game. So it wasn't work related. It was 30 minutes over like lunch, like virtual lunch, and so that helps people make jokes about things and talk about stuff. We have like this fun, crazy Friday question where people bring a Friday question of like, "What's your favorite superhero?" or other kind of icebreaker, and then once they start talking about those things, it makes stand up a lot easier. And then they start, oh, well, I was walked on this and I'm really working on this, and realizing it's okay because they're, a little bit more shy and quiet, but then realizing it's okay. The more they practice, it's going to be good. Sometimes I have had demos where people do demos of what they're working on, and then realizing that that's kind of fun to show off what they do, and everybody can see it, and they realize like, oh, okay, I'm actually good at this, and it's okay, and it's a safe space. And so really creating that open environment where everybody's doing it. It's just there's not that fear of, oh, okay, are you doing this right or wrong, or they're going to missay something. Like, I think again, creating that environment and saying like, oh yeah, just I would just joke around with people too, of like, oh, okay, is this what's really happening? And stuff. So I make fun of myself sometimes too, of like some of the things that I'll be doing for the weekend and other things like that. Because there's so many things this last year that are just ridiculous. So if you're honest about them, they're like, oh, okay, you're real. There's, nothing's perfect. So that helps as well. But like, oh my goodness, like the rain that you talked about. And I'm like, there's so many things like, like that have happened that just like people realize that, oh, okay, not everything is pretty and perfect. Like this background behind me,
Oh, for
sometimes our life
sure.
is a hot mess.
Definitely. And sorry, I'm over casting all these questions on you, Gaia.
No,
But I guess from like working from home and being a leader, how do you continue to build that culture for your company within those individuals that are joining your team? How do you keep that culture, that what is WellSky, or for that example, I guess, how do you represent that best as a leader?
sure. I think part of that is inviting others to help create that culture with you. Knowing that, it is so different now. And even as we talk about the potential of going back to the office, what does that look like? And all that other thing is like, okay, well, what are we doing well right now? And how do you still, connect with other people and stuff like that? And so, yeah, part of that I think was just, oh, okay, what's the current culture? Like, because I'm pretty new, I've been here like 3 months, try to maintain that. And then also understanding like what are people's interests, and kind of speaking towards that too. And like I think I'm going to meet some folks in a month or so just for a small happy hour. And like we have this little mini gardening club. And so I'm like, I'm going to bring you a baby fig stuff and other things like that. It's like, I don't know, but yeah, it's kind of knowing that there's a special kind of, thing of where you want to be together and kind of talking that through. And I've even done that with like product as well, as like, okay, what does this look like for us together? And what are those things that are interesting? But it is a different time, but yeah, it's nice. Like I think even like right now they're gonna do like this virtual cheese thing because I guess Antonelli's does that. And so I was like, anybody want to do cheese party with us? And they're like, no. So we're trying to maintain that, but they think I'm. And so, but yeah, it's also interesting. Julie is on the call too. I used to work with her before too. And so I feel like there's always a misconception sometimes that I've got 5 cats and it's just I have one. So there's just an interesting kind of thing, but she can probably speak to my culture and who I am as a person too.
Definitely self-deprecating. Um, and always willing to talk about cats and always willing to just talk about complete open door policy.
Yeah, yeah. Cool. Other questions? I think this is fun because this is much longer than the last session, which was like literally felt like 2 minutes.
Yeah, no, we didn't quite get through many questions in the last round, so I'm getting it nice to actually have a conversation and just be talked at. I think a lot of these sessions we don't get an opportunity to kind of get a little bit more one-on-ones with everybody as much as we'd like to. We're in person, but definitely trying to figure out what that outreach is going to look like moving forward for a lot of these events, as we've learned, you know, what sort of reach we have, and ultimately those that maybe not able to attend, it makes a big difference.
Mm-hmm.
Because I joined as the membership director about a year ago, and
Oh, nice.
I thought it would be a little bit difficult for some of these events, but they've actually turned out really awesome, and we've had some great speakers, and we're getting people from not just Austin but all different reaches of the US. So it's actually pretty interesting knowing that, we're speaking mostly to Austin women in technology, and here we have people from New York and Minnesota or wherever, they're coming from. So just
I'm
nice.
from Nebraska.
Yeah.
Oh,
so
are you?
really-
That's great.
Yeah, but I'll be moving to Austin in like 3 months. I have a full-time remote job and my company is like totally okay with me, moving to a different state, trying out new things. So mainly I joined AW2 to make, new friends, like it's not about job search or anything, like I'm happy
Yeah.
with where I am and, I want to make new friends and see how Austin, like works. Yeah, I have been in Nebraska for like more than 10 years. So Austin, it's going to be pretty new to me. Yeah. Thanks, Andrea. It was a good presentation and yeah, I love it, like a lot of good points and
Oh, good.
yeah, it
Did you?
resonated with me. I'm a project manager and it totally resonated with me, like
Oh, good.
especially the questions from Tan. I was about to ask, how do you motivate people? Same thing, like building a positive culture in remote atmosphere and yeah.
Yeah, I think motivation in this environment is very different. Like
Yeah.
I miss like where I could just do walk-bys and like roll my chair over and really see how people are doing or go to lunch and like, but I also love the flexibility of working from home. So I'm like,
I know.
like my schedule is completely different. Like I don't have to do that commute right now. And that's like spend more time with family and friends and like activities, like, but yeah, and then motivating people again, keeping things moving forward. So they're working on interesting projects. So, not just stuck on maintenance work. Also like because of new technologies, even though, WellSky's been around forever, like there's probably like 3 or 4 tools that we're all learning together. Like, and so I was interviewing an intern just like a few weeks ago, and I was like, yeah, it's very interesting. You'll be coming at the same level of us because it's new to everybody. And he thought it was funny. And I was like, it's the truth though. So which is fun for me because I love learning new things. And so it's like applying what you've learned in other contexts, this new like tools, and like moving from like, everything into the cloud, and there's so many different cloud things that are growing, and even stuff that was from like conferences a year or two ago, I'm like, it's so different now. Like I don't even, but then kind of like, okay, how do I focus in on one thing? But yeah, it's great. The
I
kind
have
of
a quick,
opportunities.
yeah, I have a question. So what is the trend in Austin now? Are they moving towards like a more hybrid approach or work from home, like fully remote? What is the trend in Austin? Just curious.
Right now, I think most people I talk to, everybody is still remote.
Okay.
I know my current company, they're saying hybrid, but
Mhm.
like 3 days in the office in the fall.
Mhm.
But from like a office standpoint, there isn't like physically enough space to equally be. So I'm like, oh, I wonder how we're gonna all figure this
Mhm.
out. And so far, I think the people that are in offices are generally like executives are very like thin staffed people on all the offices that I've talked to. But I was like, okay, well, so far most people, and then there's also companies that literally shut down their office and they don't have a lease anymore. I
Wow.
know. And so it blew my mind. And some companies are kind of starting to do that, which makes sense. It's a huge overhead for nobody actually being in the building and
Mhm.
things of that nature. Or like there used to be like that kind of startup mentality here where it was like, oh, you can have a gym, you can have food, you can have, I'm like, well, you can't really give that out, like, because it's not safe to have like these buffets of food and other things like that. So I'm like, that'll be fascinating to see how things will kind of evolve. So I think when you move, you'll be part of like, I don't know how things are going to really like
Okay.
land. It's all speculation. I don't know. So I don't know if Taryn or Julie has similar experience, but that's my interpretation of where we're at in Austin. So
Yeah, and I work with 8 or 9 different clients in Austin,
yeah.
and it is kind of half and half. I've got individuals that are 100% remote, and then I have those that are going to do what they call hoteling, which is basically just like 2 to 3 days on site, and then the rest of the day is working from home.
Huh.
Because I think they want to continue on trying to build that culture with the newer employees that haven't been able to engage in a face-to-face action. With, you know, uh, I get certain roles probably don't necessarily need that constant
Mhm.
engagement, but there is some specific teams that do, and I think they benefit for having that face-to-face interaction. It's I think the individual contributors that are probably not necessarily going to need to be as much on site as maybe their co-parts. So we're seeing across the board goals for September timeframe for those to be back on site. But at what capacity, we do not know.
I know.
It's still a big fat question mark.
Yeah, it's funny because I don't even have a badge and I'm supposed to do an on-site because my boss, he doesn't even live in Austin, and he won't. He's from an acquisition. So I was like, oh, this will be interesting. I'm supposed to meet him in June, and like I have never been to the building. It's going to be fantastic. And but you're right. I think it's a certain level, like him and above, they're meeting and then they're doing an offsite and then that's it. I'm like, okay, well that seems okay. I'm okay for a meeting or two. That's fine. So
Yeah.
but I'm like, oh, I wonder if people are like, oh, there's old, dust cobwebs, try to, get the offices back in order. They'll be interesting.
Oh, I'm
So,
sure I have some cobwebs.
and there's tons of people that have moved around this last year too. And so they're literally not where our headquarters are even. So, and I know other places too, where people have moved near family or another place, like, just to try it out. And so, which I think is awesome that people can do that now. So.
Well, I read an article, I think yesterday, in regards to how how COVID has literally expedited the work from home environment by 10 years. So we were
Mm.
heading in that direction, but honestly, probably wasn't going to be supposed to even happen until 10 years later. So like it's crazy how all this has happened within such a short period of time. And ultimately, we're all just kind of learning as we go. I don't think any one or other person has a right or wrong answer. It's just
No.
whatever fits for the organization and ultimately for the teams. 'Cause it's a leadership by leadership basis. I've literally been working with multiple organizations and multiple leaderships, and everybody's like, I'm open to whatever, whatever works. So people are working and they're doing their jobs no matter what. So as long as they're doing that, and they're happy, then that's great. But if something happens to make that change, I think they'll reevaluate and kind of move from there.